Week number 2 is upon us, and whether you started off with a big lead because Tucker Kraft was on your team, or you're down bad because you went up against Tucker Kraft, in today's video, I am going to help you get that win in week number 2. We're going to be breaking down my top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for week number 2 of the 2025 fantasy football season. If you guys are new to the channel and do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into my top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for week number 2 of the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with the must-start wide receiver ones tier with my wide receivers 1 through 12, Ja'Marr Chase, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Malik Nabers, Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ladd McConkey, Drizzy Drake London, as well as Garrett Wilson. Now, Ja'Marr Chase, my number 1 wide receiver on the week this week, was my number 1 wide receiver last week, where he finished as the wide receiver 77 versus the Cleveland Browns. This week, he gets another easy matchup up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, so I'm not really going to panic. Off of one down performance, Joe Burrow and the Bengals historically start off the season very, very slow. I believe there's a bounce back here for Ja'Marr Chase. I'm not going to panic after just one down game. At number 2, we have Puka Nacua of the LA Rams going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. The Titans defense certainly is underrated in my opinion, and I have made that very clear through the first 2 weeks of the seasons, but even so, Puka Nacua is a locked and loaded top 5, top 6 wide receiver every single week. Puka Nacua, despite the fact that the man's eye started bleeding last week, he finished as the wide receiver 5 in PPR, 10 receptions on 11 targets for 130 yards up against the Houston Texans, while Puka Nacua is the wide receiver that has a 5-star palatial estate inside of the end zone like his teammates Kyren Williams as well as Devontae Adams. Puka Nacua is a very reliable asset week in and week out and always has the upside to be the number 1 wide receiver due to the sheer amount of volume that he gets. At number 3, we have CeeDee Lamb, the man with no hands, going up against the New York Football Giants. Now, last week, if CeeDee Lamb could catch roughly anything, this is a guy that would have been probably the wide receiver 1 on the week, could have scored 30, maybe even a 40 bomb. That is how great he played in that game outside of the drop. 7 receptions for 13 yards and 110 receiving yards. CeeDee Lamb is not a guy that has had drop issues in the past, so it's kind of just something that you want to brush under the rug and don't worry about too much. At number 4, we have Justin Jefferson. Now, my nervous meter on Justin Jefferson is starting to tick up a little bit, not because I watched the game up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago and Justin Jefferson looked like dog shit. It was just the fact that the team really does want to run the ball at an incredibly high clip, and that does kind of leave Justin Jefferson to potentially not being able to get a crazy amount of targets week in and week out. I do expect, though, this game to be a high-scoring back-and-forth affair, so I think Justin Jefferson will be very involved, and even if he's getting 8 targets a game, Justin Jefferson could catch all 8 of those and go for 150 plus yards in any game. He scored a touchdown last week up against the Bears. I feel very good about him weekly, though I thought it was important to at least put a little bit of a disclaimer out there that, hey, maybe we should be a little bit, just a wee bit nervous about Justin Jefferson. Next up, we got Malik Nabers going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's world. Now, if you could just give Malik Nabers some halfway competent quarterback, then Malik Nabers would be the wide receiver 1 fucking every single week. 5 receptions on 12 targets for 71 yards last week up against the Commanders. Russell Wilson is bad. Like, let's just be honest with you. He fucking sucks donkey dick at playing quarterback in the year 2025. Once they eventually pass the torch to Jackson Dart, that is going to help out Malik Nabers a ton. Until then, though, Malik Nabers is going to get fed. He put up big games last year with worse quarterback play than Russell Wilson, so I expect things to get better, but obviously, it just sucks for Malik Nabers that his quarterback's an absolute buffoon. Next up, we got Nico Collins going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Nico Collins was a guy that I banged the drum for all summer long. I talked him up, and CJ Stroud looked kind of so-so in week number 1. The Houston Texans offense looked far from ideal up against the Rams, but honestly, I think this is a better matchup up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense this week. Nico Collins, I expect to bounce back, and even with the highs and lows of CJ Stroud last season, Nico Collins was relatively consistent, so I'm not going to panic after just one down game. Next up, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against the Chicago Bears. Now, prior to last night, there was a lot of worry in my head that, hey, maybe the Detroit Lions losing Ben Johnson was going to be the dagger in the back of the Lions offense. Maybe that is why they looked so dog shit up against the Packers last week. Then we watch Thursday Night Football up against the Commanders, and it is abundantly clear that the Packers defense is too legit to quit, and the Lions will probably be just fine. Amon-Ra was the wide receiver 47 last week, but he's the #1 target on an offense with a very competent quarterback in an offense that I believe will bounce back up against the Chicago Bears. Again, any of these guys that are in the upper echelon tier, any of these wide receivers that you drafted in like the first, the second, the third round, if they ended up shitting the bed, I'm not really worrying too much based off of one game, because last year, the wide receivers 1 through 3, it was Cooper Kupp, Allen Lazard, and someone else in week 1 last season that none of them ended up being very good on the season, so don't worry too much about week 1. Next up, we got BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Wet dream matchup last week up against the Carolina Panthers, and he had 1 reception on 7 targets because Trevor Lawrence is a legitimate dumpster fire. If Liam Cohen cannot save Trevor Lawrence, that may have been one of the biggest blunders in the NFL draft, not just because Trevor Lawrence was like a bad pick going in, right? We all thought he would be a great NFL prospect, but man, oh man, has he not lived at all up to the expectations that a lot of people set on him coming into the NFL draft. BTJ, one of the best wide receivers in the league. Excellent matchup, wet dream matchup up against the Bengals. So I do think the bounce back is here. I think Liam Cohen will figure everything out. But I mean, like, if Mac Jones can elevate BTJ, how the hell can Trevor Lawrence not do it? Next up, we move to Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, JSN is going to be every single week all reliable for your fantasy team. Is he ever going to really have that crazy big game where he's the wide receiver 1, dropping his nuts in the defense's mouth? Probably not, just because the quarterback play in Seattle is far from ideal, and you know the identity of the team is to want to run the football, but JSN gets such a safety blanket of targets weekly. 13 targets last week, 9 receptions, 124 receiving yards. Again, I don't even think Sam Darnold's all that. But it doesn't matter when JSN is going to be a very big piece in what this offense wants to do. Again, up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't expect him to finish as the wide receiver 1, but I think he's going to be a very reliable condom wrap top 12 wide receiver every single week. At number 10, we got Ladd McConkey. A lot of people are going to panic off of Ladd because Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, they outscored him in week number 1, but that was just kind of Freaky Friday in Brazil where Quentin Johnston turned into Randy Moss. Keenan Allen turned back the clock to like 2019, and Ladd McConkey was kind of just picking up the scraps, though he still had 9 targets in that game, 6 receptions, 74 receiving yards. I strongly believe he's still the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I love the matchup up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. So again, with Ladd McConkey, we're just going to stick to our priors. We're not going to panic. We're not going to bitch and moan after one bad game. We ain't worried. We're firing up with confidence. Next up, we got Drizzy Drake London, the Iceman of the Atlanta Falcons, going up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota on Monday Night Football. Good to go on Sunday with the shoulder injury. It is important to note that when you get a injury to the shoulder like Drake London suffered, there's about a 28% dip in production, I believe, from what I read. Again, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins or Manuel Ferreira, so I'm not going to sit here and say that Drake London's going down, 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 down. He's going to absolutely be terrible this week. I think he's going to be fine. He got 15 targets in week 1, 8 receptions for 55 yards. I just worry that maybe this won't be his best game, even though going up against the Vikings corners is typically a barbecue chicken matchup for wide receivers, so I still like Drake London a ton. At number 12, to close out the must-start wide receiver 1 tier, we got Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets going up against the Buffalo Bills at home in Gotham. Garrett Wilson was a guy that I talked up a lot during the summer, and a lot of people were saying that, Nick, you're an idiot, you can't trust anyone on the Jets, and I am not going to kind of piss on the grave of those people just yet that said, Nick, you're an idiot because it's just one game, right? You don't want to be doing fucking back handsprings, a cartwheel after one game, 1 week. We have seen week 1 is notoriously a liar. The matchup up against the Bills looks good, though. The Bills just got taken to Pound Town by the Ravens. Obviously, the Bills still win the game, but you get the point. So Garrett Wilson coming off of a wide receiver 7 performance where he had almost 100 receiving yards, 7 receptions, 9 targets, and a touchdown. I am feeling real nicey about that Ohio State connection in this matchup with Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. Moving now to the high-end wide receiver 2 tier here with my wide receivers 13 through 22. At number 13, we got Cortland Sutton going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. The Indianapolis Colts defense looked, frankly, beautiful, fantastic, amazing, unstoppable up against the Dolphins, but that's really just because the Dolphins offense was completely limp dick. And I think that while the Denver offense also looked in need of some Cialis last week, I do believe that they will bounce back here, even with the offense looking inept, even with Bo Nix looking like a blind man trying to throw the football. He still was able to get Cortland Sutton 6 receptions on 9 targets for 61 yards and a tug. I like this spot a ton up against the Colts, and I think Cortland Sutton is a stone cold lock to finish as a top 24 wide receiver. Next up, we got Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. going up against the Carolina Panthers, even with Kyler Murray sick, throwing up diarrhea before the game. There was a million different reports. Who knows what's true, what's not true, but he definitely was sick. It was no Jordan flu game for Kyler Murray, but it was a great game out of Maserati Marv. 5 of 6 for 71 yards and a tug as the wide receiver number 12. Now, we did see some flashes last season, like a couple of times where Maserati Marv looked very good, very nice, I like, shout out to Borat, and then obviously it comes crashing and burning down after that. But I am very optimistic that in the second year, there's no sophomore slump. This is the breakout season for Marvin Harrison Jr., and I've always thought the guy was very talented. He's got those great genes. I believe very heavily in MHJ, and I love the matchup a ton up against the Panthers, even if the Jaguars wide receivers weren't really able to get a lot going in that game. Next up, we got T. Higgins going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, T. Higgins, just like Jamar Chase, absolutely screwed the pooch in week number 1. I don't even think they scored 12 combined points in that game. The matchup up against Duval is one to be lusted about. This is really going to be a fantastic bounce back spot for the both of them. Now, again, this is a team that notoriously with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor starts incredibly slow at the pace that old people have intercourse. So I am, in a slight way, still a little bit nervous. But it's week 2. You don't get cute. You don't sit. Tee-hee. Higgins. Next up, we got A.J. Brown going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Both matchups in the Super Bowl. A.J. Brown did find the end zone this week up against the Chiefs after having 2 fantasy points last week. I know a lot of people are going to be nervous. They're going to be afraid. They are going to be petrified, and rightfully so. This isn't the greatest matchup on paper, but after just 1 target last week, you have to think he's going to, at least double it. Get 2, but in reality, again, I wasn't the biggest A.J. Brown guy in the summer. I talked about how Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts really do kind of ruin the upside of a guy like A.J. Brown, finishing as a top 5 wide receiver at the end of the season. But frankly, what we saw last week just isn't going to happen again. So if you have A.J. Brown, I wouldn't really panic. Next up, we got Magic Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. Not the best matchup for Mike Evans, but he is still the wide receiver 1 on this team. I do love Emeka Egbuka. He is in the same tier as Mike Evans. I went to bat all summer long for Egbuka. I told you guys, why draft Mike Evans when you can just get Egbuka later? And that is what I live by. I have Mike Evans on none of my teams, but Mike Evans is, well, Mike Evans. He's all reliable for your fantasy team every single week. He's hardly ever going to let you down when he is healthy, and only scoring 10 points in week number 1. I think he's going to bounce back this week. At number 18, we got Devontae Adams, the Taco Bell man, going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. But before we talk about Adams and the rest of the wide receivers in my top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for week number 2, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you receive $50 in bonus funds as well. If you don't know how pick'em works on Underdog, it's incredibly simple. You pick the higher or the lower for at least 2 players. If both your picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks above 2, then the payout will be higher. If you don't understand how it works, there will also have been a graphic on the screen showing you guys a graphic from week 1 where someone won on the Cowboys versus the Eagles game. So make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. So Devontae Adams, wide receiver 41 last week, but 8 targets, 4 receptions, 51 yards. Again, I like Devontae all summer long, like that Kid Rock song. I was talking him up. I still think Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams. The guy is immortal. He just continues to year in and year out put up big season. So after one kind of so-so game in week 1, I'm not abandoning ship on him. And again, I don't really love this matchup though up against the Titans, if I'm being honest with you, but Devontae Adams is so great. He gets so much volume and he could easily score multiple times in this game. Next up, we got Metcalf going up against the Seahawks. He looked great out there, and so did Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers is able to keep up this pace that he was able to put up in week number 1, which led to his back being sore because that's the first time he looked like an old version of himself since being on the Jets. So he looked very good. Will that pace keep up? I'm not sure. But Metcalf is the clear alpha wide receiver on this team. In a revenge game up against the Seahawks, I think it would be foolish not to rank him inside the top 24. Next up, we got Ooga Booga Egbuka. Shout out to Flight Reacts. Going up against the Houston Texans wide receiver 4 in week number 1. And I told y'all that Emeka Egbuka was going to be a big piece inside of this offense. And he gave his big piece to the Atlanta Falcons defense straight down the throat. 4 receptions, odd 6 targets for 67 yards, 1 rush for 2 for 9 rushing yards, and not 1, but 2 total tugs in that game. Buy 1, get 1 tug free, like I get at the local massage parlor. Shout out to Deshaun Watson. Emeka Egbuka, the matchup, not the best, not the most ideal, but again, Egbuka is very involved. You know how great Baker Mayfield and this offense are able to percolate, so I feel pretty good about Egbuka weekly. At number 21, we got Zay Flowers. Now, I am not fully going to sit here and apologize to everyone. Nick, you told me not to fucking draft Zay Flowers. Ha 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 ha. After one game, again, I'm trying not to victory dance too much just yet, but on my players, so I'm not going to fully fold on Zay Flowers. Look, I always knew Zay Flowers had this in him. If you guys have watched my channel, ever since Zay Flowers got drafted, I thought the guy was incredibly talented, but he suffers from the same thing that the Philadelphia Eagles do for the wide receiver core. When you're running the ball so much, a guy like Zay Flowers can get lost in the fray. In week 1, the guy that was lost in the metaphorical sauce was Mark Andrews. Zay Flowers was in there like swimwear, 7 receptions on 9 targets for 143 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver numero uno. Wet dream matchup up against the Browns. This one could get nasty early, though. This one could be over early. 12-second KO, 5-second KO, Jorge Masvidal to Ben Askren, and that could lead to them taking the foot off the gas and just run the ball gently down the stream with Tractor Cedo Derrick Henry. So I caution you guys not to get too high on Zay Flowers this week, but based on what we saw last week, I mean, he's got to be a top 24 wide receiver. And again, if they're putting belt to ass against the Browns, it's probably because Zay Flowers does something crazy in the first half. Next up, we got Ricky Pearsall. Now, going from Brock Purdy to Mac Jones is not good. I know, oh, Mac Jones was a first-round pick, and Brock Purdy was the Mr. Irrelevant. Yeah, like, that fucking matters in a conversation. Tom Brady was not an early-round pick, and that guy's the GOAT. So I think Ricky Pearsall, you're going to feel a little bit of the burn of not having big cock Brock Purdy out there, but ultimately, Ricky Pearsall is the only healthy wide receiver really out there worth jack shit, so he's going to be gobbling in all of the targets. He had a great week number 1 as the wide receiver, 24 receptions on 7 targets for over 100 yards. I think he goes over 100 yards yet again. I am just hesitant to rank him higher because I just don't trust Mr. Mac Jones. Next up, we move into the third tier here, which I am going to call the low-end wide receiver 2s, and there are just 3 wide receivers in this tier. Hetero McMillan, Wiki, DJ Moore, as well as Jacoby Myers. Now, T-Mac, if Bryce Young wasn't sucking on a fat hog, shout out to Mia Malkova, then T-Mac would have went nuclear. All of the, dude, it was so frustrating to watch because if you were locked into that game, I really think that T-Mac should have scored a touchdown in that game. I think T-Mac should have had way more catches. In that game, he had a 22.9% target share with a 40.6% air yard share, 1.94 yards per route run, and a 27.3% first read share, and a 0.114 first down per route run, according to Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros. It's open. Bryce Young kind of screwed the pooch, but it is what it is. It was his first ever game. I think Bryce Young's better than what we saw on Sunday, but I'll hold my true fucking get super high and mighty on T-Mac for just another week. You know, I'll rank him here, even though I want to rank him higher because I love the spot up against the Cardinals. It's just Bryce Young scares the fuck out of me. Next up, we got Wiki DJ Moore going up against the Detroit Lions. Last week, DJ Moore got hit so hard. If that was me, I probably would have shit myself and they would have had to take me out in the ambulance in a stretcher. DJ Moore somehow comes back after that, after I thought he was going to be down and out for at least the next couple of weeks. He's all good. He's built different than I am. 3 receptions, odd 5 targets for 68 yards, 3 rushes for 8 yards. The rushing is very solid for DJ Moore. If you're getting an extra 3-4 rushing attempts every single game, which you're just not used to for a wide receiver, unless you're talking about like Deebo Samuel, that is just extra added upside on the plate of a guy like DJ Moore, who's a very talented wide receiver. I do worry about Rome Odunze potentially taking over as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. So I can't rank DJ Moore too high, but to me, he is still the wide receiver 1 here, and he did look good in week number 1 via the eye test, because again, another guy that was wide open for a fucking touchdown, and Caleb Williams was just too busy thinking about something else, I guess, in order to throw the ball to him and actually hit him. I have no fucking idea what's wrong with Caleb Williams as well. Next up, we got Jacoby Myers going up against the LA Chargers. Now, I am going to say this every single week this season. Jacoby Myers will probably never win you a week by himself. He will probably never win you your fantasy league. But what Jacoby Myers will do is be a good old reliable top 24 wide receiver in a majority of weeks. He's probably not going to drop that 28 plus bomb performance to where Jacoby Myers carries you to sweet, sweet victory. Shout out to SpongeBob and Patrick. He is probably never going to potentially even screw the pooch for you because he sees so many targets. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 97 receiving yards up against the Patriots in Foxborough as the wide receiver 15. He's safe. He'll probably never win you your week. He'll probably never lose you your week. The matchup here against the Chargers is a little bit concerning, but again, Jacoby Myers is a safety valve in this offense. Moving now on into the 4th tier, which is the high-end wide receiver 3s, headlined by Tyreek. There's going to be people in the comments, Nick, you can't possibly start Tyreek after what happened last week. Nick, Tyreek Hill was a bust. Ha, 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 ha. And I get it, right? The Dolphins offense looked putrid. You could smell the steaming pile of dog shit through the screen that was the Miami Dolphins offense, but there is reason to believe that they will bounce back. No Christian Gonzalez. Again, it was brutal to watch, but Tyreek still the wide receiver 1. Jalen Waddle is banged up, gonna play through it. I think Tyreek Hill is going to have a better game. Now listen, and listen clearly. If Tyreek Hill scores 8 fucking fantasy points again, I am going to be very, very, very nervous after this game, but I don't think that will be the case. But again, he's very risky, so he can't be ranked any higher. Next up is Devontae Smith. Again, I think Devontae Smith is a very talented player. I faded him during draft season because I don't view him as a league winner. I just view him as you draft him as the wide receiver 24. You get the wide receiver 24, 25 at the end of the season. Last year, he's iced out of the game plan. 3 targets, 3 receptions, 16 receiving yards as the wide receiver 76. Are things going to get better? Yes. Is he going to have much better games than this? 100%. Don't sell your Devontae Smith stock for a half-eaten bag of potato chips, okay? A half-eaten bag of fucking Pringles, even though those don't come in a bag and they come in a can. Going up against the Kansas City Chiefs is fine for Devontae Smith, and I just expect him to be kind of meh every week in this range. Next up, we got Hollywood Brown going up against the Eagles, wide receiver 9 last week. Now, there were some people that pointed out that, Nick, you really didn't think that Hollywood Brown would be great last week. Nick, you were so incredibly wrong. Well, how would I know that Xavier Worthy would get whacked Soprano style by his own teammate, Travis Kelce, within 7 seconds of the start of the game? Hollywood Brown finishes as the wide receiver 9, 10 receptions on 16 targets for 99 yards. Xavier Worthy might come back in this game, but I don't trust him. How can you trust that after that injury, after it looked as bad as that? Sure, he might be out there and he might catch a couple of balls, but I think Hollywood will be the number 1 target on the team this week. I don't trust him. I don't love it, but some of you guys, you might have to trust him this week. You might have to throw him into your lineup. And it's fine because he will have a healthy dosage of targets this week. Next up, we got George Pickens. Now, George Pickens ultimately had your team begging for forgiveness after that game last week up against the Birds. I kind of waved the white flag before the matchup and said, hey, don't get too overzealous with your ranking of Pickens. He's a great player. I love him for the season, but ultimately, it's week 1 in a tough spot up against the Birds, and he was the wide receiver 62, though it does seem like him and Dak have a solid enough connection, and George Pickens can actually catch the ball, unlike his teammate CeeDee Lamb. That's obviously a joke. It's meant to be a joke. I still believe CeeDee Lamb's the wide receiver 1 on this team. As him and Dak get a better connection, though, I think the upside is huge. Now, on paper, this is a great spot for a big breakout George Pickens game for his Cowboys career, but I will throw a bit of caution in here because this is the kind of game where they just beat down on the Giants. They are just beating down on them relentlessly, and when that happens, they don't have to throw the ball as much. So you're going to see a lot of Javonte. So if George Pickens doesn't get it wet early and have a solid game, he'll probably be just kind of meh. And I kind of just expect a top 36-ish finish out of him. I don't expect his biggest game as a Cowboy to come this week. Next up, we got Travis Hunter going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for Brian Thomas Jr., it was like Trevor Lawrence just took some pills in the morning that lowered his IQ by 70 points. Like, he literally, or his vision, like, whenever he looked at BTJ, he went cross-eyed. He had no idea what was going on. He looked like Mincy from Barstool, and it frankly just didn't work at all. But now, and that's not meant to be like a shot at like, oh, Mincy's some bad guy. Mincy seems like a nice guy. But anyone who knows who he is probably got the point that I made there. And Nick, you're an ugly fuck too. I know, I look like a character from Mr. Meaty. Someone said that one time, which I thought was actually hilarious. So Travis Hunter going up against the Bengals in Cincinnati. 6 receptions last week, 8 targets, 33 yards. The talk is they're going to try to use him more defensively in this game. This is a great spot up against the Bengals for the best game of Travis Hunter's career so far to come. He scored just 9 fantasy points last week. I like Hunter, but again, if Trevor Lawrence is going to play like how he did last week, how can you get much higher than this? Next up, you got Jerry Jeudy going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I don't trust Jerry Jeudy at all. Jerry Jeudy kind of looked like he went back to his old ways last week where he was in Denver, where the ball's hitting him right in the hands. He's dropping them. He's kind of doing some stupid shit out there. 5 of 8 for 66 yards. I really do like Cedric Tillman. I think Cedric Tillman is poised to take over as the wide receiver 1 on this team, but still, right now, where I would sit, he is the wide receiver 1 on the team, and this is a team that is really devoid of wide receivers because they do a lot of 2 wide receiver sets because of that, and that's why we saw not a lot of Isaiah Bond, not a lot of Jamari Thrash, and we saw a ton of Njoku as well as Harold Fannin in that game. The Ravens matchup, no bueno, but they're going to be down. They're going to have to throw, and that could elevate Jeudy past this. Next up, we got Rome Odunze going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. I made this joke all of last week. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Ben Johnson's going to build up Rome Odunze to be great, and Rome Odunze looked good in week 1, 6 of 9 for 37 yards and a tug as the wide receiver 19. I think once Caleb Williams finally figures this out, Rome Odunze is going to be on a rocket ship to the moon, but until then, I don't think you could get higher than this. Final guy here is going to be Keenan Allen up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Now, Keenan Allen last season as a Chicago Bear was as unreliable as it gets. He was either dropping 15, 20 plus points, or he was scoring below 10 points. I'm pretty sure it was 5 games above 15 points and 10 games below 10 points. So he was either red hot, right? Like you took a bite out of a hot pocket the second it came out the oven, or a pizza roll and it just burns your whole entire mouth. Pizza rolls are ready. Shout out to James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and KD. I love Keenan Allen. He has been just a staple of this channel for years. I have been a Keenan Allen truther until last year, where I kind of faded away from him. But as a Charger, I always loved him. He's back on the Chargers, wide receiver 10, last week up against the Chiefs. I do still think Ladd's the guy, though, so I will temper my expectations. He should be a very safe, reliable play, though, for you. Like, in terms of reliability, he's probably one of the safest bets inside of this tier. Next tier and the final tier here is going to be the low-end wide receiver 3s, headlined by Stephon Diggs. Now, in week number 1, Stephon Diggs was on a milk carton because he played below 50% of the snaps. There was a lot of Keyshawn booty. Now, Stefon Diggs technically wasn't invisible. John Cena, you can't see me because he had 12 fantasy points, 6 receptions on 7 targets for 57 yards. But it was like the team wanted to use the just the tip approach. They didn't want to go all the way in, just ease him in. And it's a bit of a tease for us fantasy players because Stefon Diggs could have had a much bigger game if they utilized him heavier. I believe that they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing up his snap share, his workload, and he will become the undisputed #1 wide receiver on the Draco May Patriots. We just saw the Dolphins defense get cut up aggressively, get fucking destroyed, build, destroy, like that old Cartoon Network show by the Indianapolis Colts. So Stefon Diggs should be able to bounce it back in this game, but I didn't rank him higher, even though I love this spot because the Dolphins corners are terrible. The secondary is dog shit, like I said all summer, so they're gonna have to throw the ball a lot. But the problem is, if they don't fully throw him out there and use him more, then he's kind of just going to be stuck in this range. Next up's Calvin Ridley. I love Calvin Ridley. I talked him up all summer. I said last week, caution, hit the brake, slam on the brake. Don't just tap the brake, fucking slam on the brake like someone just stopped short in front of you. And I told you to do that. He was the wide receiver 56. Terrible matchup up against PS2, Patrick Surtain, and the Broncos in Mile High. This week, not much of a better draw up against the Rams defense. Obviously, it is a better draw because the Denver Broncos have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but not a supreme draw here up against the LA Rams. Brighter days are ahead. Clear wide receiver 1, though, on the team. I think he should be fine this week. Next up is Jameson Williams going up against the Bears. The Lions just didn't do anything up against the Green Bay Packers. Jameson Williams didn't do much. He did just get paid. He's the wide receiver 57 last week. Brighter days are ahead for him and the Lions, but ultimately, I still think Amon-Ra's the guy. They want to use Laporta a bunch. They want to use Gibbs a ton. I think J-Mo might be chilling in the cuck chair watching from the side, but he always has that ability to just get one crazy catch deep down the field, get like an 80-yard touchdown, and then just the next drive, run it back and do the same thing and straight up win you your week. Next up, we got Keon Coleman going up against the No One Circles, or from the No One Circles wise, like the Buffalo Bills, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, I have been a Keon Coleman detractor all summer. I started to kind of get a little bit more onto Keon Coleman to where it wasn't a fade. It was more of just like, if you want to take him, take him. But nothing I saw last year was great. But then we heard all of these reports couple of days leading up to the season that were just saying, Keon Coleman's the guy. Keon Coleman's going to be the #1 wide receiver. It's not Khalil Shakir. It's Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman. The drum beat was so loud, you could hear it from Buffalo, and I live in fucking New Jersey. The drum beat was that loud. If you were in Canada land, you would have heard that shit, which I guess is technically closer to Buffalo, but you get the point, okay? Keon Coleman, the drum beat was so positive, and the drum beat was correct. One tug, 112 receiving yards, 8 receptions, 11 targets as the wide receiver #2. Was that his best game probably of the year? Maybe, maybe not. Not a great matchup up against the Jets, though. So pump the brakes a little bit. But if he continues to be the wide receiver 1 in a Josh Allen Buffalo Bills offense that at any given point could put up a huge performance, you gotta like Mr. Keon. Next up, we got Chris Olave going up against the 49ers at home in New Orleans. Chris Olave, one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. I genuinely believe that, but he is handcuffed by the fact that Spencer Rattler is terrible and by the fact that he always gets hurt. Last week, he hit the blue tent not once, but twice. Now, I don't root for injuries. I hate seeing guys get hurt. My quarterback of my team, my Miami Dolphins, gets hurt brushing his fucking teeth. It sucks and it hurts, so I don't root for Chris Olave to get hurt. But I didn't draft him because I saw too many clear, glaring injury risk and because I don't trust the quarterback play. But he got 13 targets, 7 receptions, 54 yards. If him and Spencer Rattler, or him and Tyler Shuck, when they eventually pull the plug on Spencer Rattler, can develop a good connection, peanut butter and jelly time, then Chris Olave can be very good, but there's so many glaring question marks that make me not be able to rank him higher. Next up is Cedric Tillman, my main man, Cedric Tillman. Now, this could be a one-game Linsanity run out of Cedric Tillman, a one-game pop, and then the bubble has been bursted for the rest of the season, and Judy's the guy. 5 receptions on 8 targets for 52 yards and a touchdown up against the Bengals last week as a top 18 wide receiver. Matchup, not so bueno up against the Ravens, but again, they're going to be down. Cool Joe Flacco is going to be heaving that thing up late in the game. Tillman, to me, looked better than Judy. He did, in my opinion. They did see a similar amount of targets, though. So, again, there's reasons why you would want to have Judy and not Tillman. It's because Jeudy was drafted significantly higher because he's just more reliable, right? We've only seen 3 games out of Tillman. We've seen a bunch of good games out of Jeudy throughout his career. Next up, we got the final guy, Kayshon Boutte, big booty Jeudy of the New England Patriots. Shoulder limited again on Thursday. Something to monitor if he does not play. Obviously, you don't want to play him and you want to bump Diggs up another tier. Boutte in his last 5 games with the Patriots has just been super involved. It's clear him and Drake May, maybe it's that breakfast narrative from a couple years ago where Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp were having breakfast, and the other guy that was on the team, whose name is escaping me, was Allen Robinson. A lot of people were drafting him. Allen Robinson was iced out of that breakfast, and him and Cooper Kupp were fucking feasting like it was at a Denny's. Kayshon Boutte clearly has good chemistry, good favoritism from Draco May. Great game last week as the wide receiver 17, though I think that this might be the peak of the year, right, where Diggs keeps creeping up and Boutte keeps on falling. But even so, he should be the number 2. And if this offense is as good as everyone who was gargling the nuts of the Patriots all summer long told us it would be, then Kayshon Boutte should be able to be reliable as like a flex wide receiver 4 type of play. This week, though, I got him as a low-end wide receiver 3 range, even though technically, Nick, this isn't technically low-end wide receiver 3s because he's technically not a low-end wide receiver 3. He's technically in like the wide receiver 4 range, and you have just a lot of wide receiver, the high-end wide receiver 3s. It's just basically how I view them. It's not technically based upon the rankings. Like, I would be very happy if Tyreek Hill was my wide receiver 3 or Devontae Smith, all those guys in that tier. Once you get to where Diggs is, it's more of like you're not feeling as comfortable or more of a flex play, even if the ranking doesn't technically mean that. And hopefully you guys understand that. And if you don't understand that and you just want me to go very basic, because like, again, when we get to tier 3, my low end wide receiver 2s, technically Jacoby's a wide receiver 3 because he's number 25. So hopefully you guys understand that. If you want me to just be more basic with it, like, oh, you have to be inside the 1 through 12 to be a 1, 13 through 24 to be a 2. Let me know down below in the comment section. I probably didn't even have to explain that because some of you guys probably didn't even enter your brain that is how this works. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all of you guys so deeply. Thank you guys for all of the support we have seen so far this season. It's only week 2, and it's only going to keep getting better. I appreciate all you guys. I love you guys so much. I hope you guys do have a great rest of your guys' day, and I'll see you tomorrow with the quarterback and tight end rankings. Love you long time. Have a great one. As always, check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Good boy!